Imagine the most revered figure in your culture, one who inspires unwavering faith, profound peace, and unconditional respect. A beacon promising salvation and spiritual enlightenment, guiding souls through life's trials. Now twist that image. What if that very figure was the cruelest trap imaginable? A wolf in sheep's clothing, waiting to exploit your deepest vulnerabilities. In the vibrant yet vulnerable heart of Canton, 1880s China, where an empire crumbled and hope dwindled, a chilling shadow dared to don a mask of light. A legendary secret society, not content with mere theft, stole faith itself, transforming devotion into sheer despair. This is the dark saga of the Hongmen Triad's fake monk gang, an unholy deception that brutally obliterated the line between the sacred and the profane. The year is 1880, and the once mighty Qing Dynasty, inheritor of millennia of imperial rule, groans under the weight of its own decay. China, a land of ancient splendor, found itself battered by external powers and ravaged by internal strife. A precarious state ripe for exploitation by those with cunning and ambition. Decades earlier, the Opium Wars had shattered Chinese sovereignty, forcing open its ports and humiliating its proud people. This humiliation was quickly followed by devastating rebellions, like the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, which tore across the landscape, claiming millions of lives and further destabilizing an already fragile central government. The emperor, once seen as the son of heaven, now seemed a distant, ineffectual figure, his authority eroding with each passing crisis. This vacuum of power inevitably led to a surge in local strongmen, and, more ominously, the shadowy resurgence of secret societies, ready to carve out their own spheres of influence. Enter the Hongmen, or Tiandihui, the Heaven and Earth Society. Originally forged with the noble, albeit politically charged, ideal of overthrowing the Qing and restoring the Ming, their patriotic fervor, slowly but surely, began to intertwine with more pragmatic and often nefarious activities. To fund their grand political ambitions, and simply to survive and thrive in a lawless era, the Hongmen, like many secret societies, adapted. Their focus shifted from pure insurgency to territorial control, and critically, to less than legal methods of fundraising, evolving into powerful criminal syndicates. Canton, known today as Guangzhou, stood at the epicenter of this tumultuous change. As a bustling port city, it was a gateway to global trade, a melting pot of cultures, and a magnet for both immense wealth and abject poverty. Its strategic location made it invaluable and deeply vulnerable. Merchants from across the globe converged here, their junks laden with exotic goods, while local traders navigated treacherous routes to bring their wares to market. But beneath this vibrant commercial facade, desperation brewed, creating the perfect breeding ground for those willing to seize power by any means necessary. Before we delve deeper into this unholy alliance of faith and fraud, please consider subscribing to our channel for more gripping stories from history's forgotten corners. Hit the like button if you're already captivated, and tell us in the comments, what city or country are you watching this story unfold from? Your engagement truly helps us bring these forgotten tales to life. Why choose the guise of a Buddhist monk? The brilliance of this deception lay in its profound simplicity and deep cultural resonance. In 19th century China, few figures commanded as much immediate, unquestioning respect as a monastic individual, representing peace, wisdom, and spiritual guidance. Monks were perceived as being beyond the mundane world, immune to its corruptions, and dedicated solely to enlightenment. This inherent reverence granted them unparalleled mobility, allowing them to traverse towns and rural paths without suspicion, often offered hospitality by devout villagers. The shaved head, the saffron or gray robes, the serene demeanor. These weren't just costumes, they were keys that unlocked doors of trust and disarmed potential victims. Who would question a holy man offering blessings, even if those blessings came with a price? To maintain their cunning facade, the fake monks meticulously mimicked authentic monastic life. They engaged in simulated rituals, perhaps chanting sutras, badly one might imagine, or performing rudimentary ceremonies, all designed to reinforce their pious image. Their language was laced with devout phrases, speaking of karma, enlightenment, and the transient nature of worldly possessions. A rather ironic choice, considering their primary objective was to acquire as many worldly possessions as possible from others. The image they projected was one of asceticism and profound wisdom, a stark contrast to the rough-and-tumble street thugs most people associated with secret societies. This carefully crafted persona was a masterstroke, a psychological weapon designed to lower the guard of even the most wary. Their bases of operation were equally shrewdly chosen. Remote, forgotten temples, or even small, unassuming chapels nestled along winding roads provided ideal hideouts. These sites were often already associated with pilgrimage or quiet reflection, making their presence seem entirely natural. These sacred locations, far from serving as havens of spiritual contemplation, became clandestine nerve centers. They were not only meeting points for the gang members, but also served as secure places to stash the often substantial sums of money extorted from their unsuspecting victims. The sheer audacity of subverting sacred spaces for such profane and criminal ends is truly astonishing. These were places meant for worship and sanctuary, deliberately twisted into instruments of fear and greed, a blatant desecration that amplified the treachery. Imagine walking past a revered temple, hearing the faint echoes of chanting, and believing yourself safe, only to realize the very pillars of faith had been hollowed out, replaced by the calculating hearts of criminals. It's a dark irony that still resonates today. The Hongmen's fake monks understood that control over infrastructure meant control over commerce. Their strategy involved positioning themselves strategically along Canton's most vital trade routes, the arteries through which wealth flowed and livelihoods moved. They targeted bridges spanning crucial waterways, narrow mountain passes that funneled travelers, and key junctions connecting Canton to prosperous inland regions. These choke points became their personal toll booths, ensuring no one passed without contributing to their illicit coffers. These were the very roads that should have been veins of prosperity, bringing goods and opportunities to countless people. Instead, under the unholy watch of the fake monks, they became arteries of pure extortion, bleeding travelers dry for profit. The methodology was brutally simple and shockingly effective. Travelers, from humble peasants carrying their harvest to wealthy merchants transporting valuable silks, were suddenly intercepted by these holy men, demanding their due. The initial approach might be deceptively polite, a solemn request for a donation to the temple, perhaps to ensure safe passage or ward off ill fortune. But beneath this veneer of piety lay an unmistakable current of menace, a promise of dire consequences for non-compliance. Refusal was not an option. A peasant might face a swift, brutal beating, their meager goods ransacked. A merchant, more valuable, might find his journey indefinitely delayed, his cargo threatened, or even face the terrifying prospect of disappearance. A fate far worse than losing money. These were not just isolated incidents. It was a systematic, organized campaign of terror. The donations quickly escalated into outright passage fees, enforced with a chilling efficiency that left no room for negotiation or dissent. Beyond the roads, the gang extended its reach into the bustling local markets and vital port districts of Canton and its surrounding villages. Here, they operated a sophisticated protection racket, preying on the very lifeblood of the city's economy. Merchants setting up their stalls, fishermen bringing in their catch, artisans selling their crafts, all were approached by the fake monks, demanding taxes of protection. These levies were presented as guarantees that no calamity would befall them. The implicit threat was clear. If you didn't pay, calamity would most certainly befall you, courtesy of the very monks offering protection. It was a cynical, cruel system, turning the very fabric of community trust into a profitable enterprise of fear. How did these fake monks maintain such a brazen operation without immediate detection or serious government intervention for so long? The answer lay in a vast, insidious web of corruption, stretching its tendrils far beyond the roadsides. The Hongmen, a secret society with deep roots, understood the power of a well-placed bribe. Small local officials, often poorly paid and easily intimidated, became willing or unwilling accomplices, turning a blind eye to the monks' activities. Local guards, ostensibly charged with protecting the populace, were often on the Triad's payroll, ensuring that any complaints against the monks simply vanished into thin air, never reaching higher authorities. Justice, it seemed, was a commodity for sale. Even some community leaders, individuals who should have stood as protectors of their people, were either too fearful to act or, more cynically, had been co-opted, enjoying a share of the spoils in exchange for their silence and cooperation. The organization behind the robed facade was formidable. The Hongmen Triad didn't rely solely on bribes. Their fearsome reputation preceded them, a silent threat that hung heavy in the air, ensuring obedience from both victims and potential whistleblowers. Their well-known history of brutality, of swift and merciless retaliation against those who crossed them, was a powerful deterrent. Everyone knew what happened to those who dared to defy the Triad. Their fates served as chilling cautionary tales. This systematic intimidation created an atmosphere of pervasive fear, guaranteeing not only the cooperation of the bribed officials, but also the desperate silence of the exploited villagers and merchants. Nobody wanted to be the next example. Beyond physical violence, the fake monks expertly manipulated fear and deeply ingrained superstition. They threatened victims with maleficent curses or divine retribution if they dared to speak out or resist their demands. Imagine being a superstitious peasant, already struggling, then told by a holy man that your misfortunes would multiply tenfold, or that your ancestors would turn against you if you didn't appease them. It was a potent psychological weapon. This clever combination of very real violence and carefully cultivated spiritual terror ensured that the victims were not just robbed of their money, but also of their agency, their voice, and their very peace of mind, trapped in a horrifying illusion. Even the most meticulously crafted deception eventually shows cracks, and the illusion of Canton's fake monks was no exception. Slowly, an anomaly began to be perceived, a dissonance between the sacred role they claimed and the profane reality they enacted. The sheer volume and frequency of the donations became conspicuously excessive, far beyond what any legitimate temple would demand. How many offerings could one temple possibly need, year after year, week after week? It defied logic, even in a devout society. Then there was the subtle, yet undeniable, veiled ostentation of the monks themselves. Perhaps a glimmer of expensive silk beneath a frayed robe, or an unusual abundance of fine tea during a meditation break. Tiny details that didn't quite fit the ascetic ideal. Most damning were the consistent, harrowing stories of violence and intimidation. Separately, these might be dismissed as banditry, but collectively, with the same recurring figures in saffron robes, they began to paint a very different, disturbing picture. The whispers of desperation, initially hushed and fearful, began to grow louder, more insistent. From tea houses to market stalls, the tales of inexplicable monastic extortion and brutality started to connect, forming a collective understanding of the truth. These silent denunciations, passed from neighbor to neighbor, from village to village, slowly coalesced into a simmering indignation. Merchants ruined by exorbitant taxes, families driven from their homes due to unpaid dues. The boiling point was approaching. The sheer injustice of it all, the betrayal of their deepest spiritual beliefs, was a potent catalyst. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the desecration of something sacred, a profound wrong that demanded rectification, even at great risk. Into this volatile atmosphere stepped an unlikely figure, or perhaps a collective. It might have been a local official, genuinely committed to justice, who began to connect the dots, risking his career and his life to investigate the growing rumors. Or perhaps it was a group of desperate, unified villagers, a nascent vigilante force, who decided they had endured enough, banding together to secretly observe and gather evidence against their oppressors. Courage, after all, can bloom in the harshest of conditions. In a compelling twist of fate, it could even have been a genuine monk, a true spiritual seeker, horrified by the profanation of his faith, who bravely decided to expose the charade, knowing full well the perilous wrath such a revelation would provoke. The narrative culminates in the inevitable, explosive confrontation. The slow-burning fuse of suspicion finally reached its powder keg, leading to the dramatic unmasking of the fake monks and the downfall of their unholy enterprise. Through painstaking investigation, whether by a lone official or a collective of the wronged, concrete proofs were finally gathered. Perhaps hidden caches of money, incriminating documents, or even weapons found in a sacred temple, betraying their true nature. The net tightened. A targeted raid, a siege on one of their principal temples, or secluded hideouts, marked the beginning of the end. The tranquility of the monastic facade shattered, revealing the grim reality beneath. The revelation of their true identities, hardened criminals, not holy men, unleashed a torrent of public fury and profound disillusionment. The sacred robes, once symbols of reverence, now became emblems of ultimate betrayal. The consequences for the fake monks themselves were swift and severe. Captured, exposed, and stripped of their deceptive guise, they faced the full, albeit often imperfect, wrath of the local authorities, and, perhaps even more terrifyingly, the public. While the Hongmen Triad was a sprawling, resilient organization capable of weathering many storms, this public exposure of their monastic deception was a significant blow. It brought considerable shame upon their Canton operations. It likely forced a strategic reorganization, perhaps even a temporary retreat from such overtly deceptive tactics in the region. One can't simply reuse a costume once it's been so thoroughly discredited, not without public ridicule. The story of the fake monks became a grim, cautionary tale, echoing through the marketplaces and villages of China. It served as a stark reminder of the perilously thin line between profound faith and elaborate fraud, a lesson learned through bitter experience. More broadly, this episode contributed to a growing skepticism, influencing the public perception of secret societies and the ever-present threat of corruption within the declining Qing Empire. No longer could every robed figure be trusted implicitly. It underlined the dangerous vulnerability of blind trust and the insidious ways in which power, greed, and cunning can manipulate even the most cherished symbols of society for the darkest of ends. A truly unsettling chapter in China's past. The saga of the fake monk gang in Canton, thriving in the tumultuous 1880s, transcends a simple criminal narrative. It stands as a chilling case study in the insidious ingenuity of human evil and the profound vulnerability inherent in the human capacity for faith. These individuals didn't merely engage in petty theft or common extortion. They orchestrated a profound psychological assault. They exploited the deepest spiritual reverence, twisting symbols of peace and enlightenment into instruments of fear and oppression. Their greatest heist wasn't just the money they stole. It was the innocence of belief itself, the sacred trust placed in figures of spiritual authority. They corrupted the very essence of devotion, turning it into a tool for manipulation and gain. This story compels us to look beyond superficial appearances, to question what truly lies beneath the revered mantle, the pious demeanor. It serves as a stark reminder that the most perilous demons often don't manifest with horns or pitchforks. Instead, they can emerge with serene smiles and sacred robes, cloaked in an aura of sanctity, preying on our inherent desire for guidance and protection. It's a sobering thought. How far would your own faith stretch before harsh reality tore away the illusion? Thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey through a forgotten corner of history. What are your thoughts on how easily faith can be exploited? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, leave a like, and we'll see you in the next video.